and welcome to Life Support Live, the weekly live show that explores how Star Trek can help us to boldly go in our own lives to better ourselves and the rest of humanity.
As a famous starship captain always used to say at least once, and as another famous starship captain once said, wherever our mission takes us, we'll try to have a little fun along the way.
Hi everyone, I am Dr. Ali Mattu.
And I'm Dr. Trek, Larry Nemecek. One of us is a real doctor.
And we'll leave it to you to decide who that is. Unfortunately, one of us is not a set operator because as I was getting ready to go live with Larry today, my mic just sort of fell apart on me, and I could not figure out how to fix it. And so I just grabbed some gaffer tape. So hopefully it does not fall off onto my laptop. We shall see.
Hopefully not too big a gaff is what that is saying.
Oh.
Yes.
Speaking of things falling off, Larry, I heard there was an earthquake today in LA. You doing okay? Did you feel it? Everything okay down there?
Well, we're fine. But I did feel it. I felt that more like any quake I felt in a long time. I mean, I was right here. I was doing some way too late night work, and I said on Twitter that I literally felt like I was a kid back at my grandpa's, sitting on the tailgate of the pickup, rolling across a pasture with a lot of gopher holes in it. I mean, I felt bouncy and it went on. Somebody, I was thinking I was overestimating, but somebody on Twitter said the main jolt was like 20 seconds, and that seems an eternity, but it felt like it. But you know, I was literally looking at shells here, expecting something to teeter over.
Fall off. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're okay. Unfortunately, it's another reality of California. On the bright news, Larry, we were talking about wildfires up here and down there last week. We got some rain this week that really helped.
I was realizing that the wildfires went away in lieu of all the other headlines of the day, so that's good to hear. Yeah.
Unfortunately, our friends up in the Pacific Northwest are still struggling with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we are matching shirts because we are matching doctor. We even both have a pin. Larry, what are you wearing today?
Well, I always have a portal pin on, but this is our I'm a Trekophile, our new button that we brought out just in time to give to nobody for the Trek Files. It just says I'm a Trekophile with an F, spelled with an F, as we say. Yeah. from my Roddenberry podcast, and But you know what? Our topic today is, this is corny, but like I did green for jealousy last week, and this is supposed to be true blue for friendship.
Right.
I don't know what your idea was, but that was mine. So.
Oh well, you know, I just I'm always a fan of Life Support Blue. Our chat is so many people are offering help for my mic. I'd love to get your help if you all can figure out how to put that into this.
Oh,
and this.
you have a little Goby. That's what I used for the first couple of years.
Yeah. So I have a little mic stand. I have a Rode Video Mic Pro that sits on this, and this part came out, and then the mic fell down, and I think I'm missing a screw. I think I got a screw loose, Larry. And now it's gaffer tape. But we have a show to do. Thank you all for your support. If you could drop by.
Wait, you didn't say anything about a show.
Here's a secret, kid. It's on right now. So we are. What are we talking about today, Larry? What's on deck for us today?
I gave it a. Well, you know, if you can't read since you wrote it, it's right there. we since we've been taking our cue from the Lower Decks episode each week while they're running, and by the way, we're down to episode 7. There's only 3 left in season 1. Welcome to the modern world of the 10-episode season. We've been taking our cue from the theme of the new Lower Decks episode, but spreading to the whole franchise as usual. And this week we came away from the Ace story with not just friendship in general, because there can be all kinds of friendships, but the friendships that are actually, as opposed to the ones that seem to grab headlines, the non-toxic friendships, for one, actually, I called it a growth friendship. Friendships that help you grow, friends that hold you to the fire, that help you find your way, that help you improve, to make life better for you and the rest of humanity in their own way. And then maybe you reciprocate, or maybe it's one-sided. But good friendships, the way we saw with Mariner and her old friend Amina Ramsey this week. So without getting too spoilery, that's what we're looking at.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jared says, why do I get the impression that Ali's choice of a shirt is less theming and more what was clean today? Jared, don't tell anyone. Don't tell anyone my secrets.
You had the button pinned on already. That's what the
right. It just stays there. So
what
Larry,
are we doing today? I'm going to ask the question for once. So that's our theme this week, Ali. But for anybody new with us today, what are we doing here?
Yeah. Thanks, Larry. Thanks for that assist. This is Life Support Live. So we're a weekly Star Trek TV show. Or not TV show. We're not a weekly Star Trek TV show. We are
And we're back.
Star Trek live show that explores Star Trek as well as themes of mental health and what we can learn to get through this tough time together. We go through a few different segments. We have our briefing room where we talk about all these things in canon. We're going to jump into the Counselor's Log, where I do a deeper dive into some of the psychology behind what we're seeing and what we're talking about. Then I kick it over to Larry, who does a K3 Factor, which is a deeper dive into some of the canon, usually something you didn't know or didn't consider before. And then we open it up with hailing frequencies. We're always talking with you throughout the episode with your comments, but in the hailing frequencies, we do a deeper dive. And if anyone wants to talk to us, you don't have to be on screen. You can also just talk to us. We've got the Skype channel is open at Life Support Live Host. Just send us a message over there, and we'll see about bringing you on the show in a little bit. But until then, we're always active here in the comments, and let's kick things off by hearing your comment on what friendship do you think is the best example of the kinds of friendships that help you grow? Constructive friendships, friends that push you. Yeah, friends that push you when you need it. Friends that call you out on things when you need to be called out. Friends that are there for you during the really tough times. What examples from Star Trek really stick out to you? Let us know in the comments. With that, Larry, let's just kind of open up our non-spoiler discussion of...
Okay.
Go ahead, Larry.
One non-spoiler, a spoiler for today, I think you left out, and I don't think you meant to, the fact that we top off the show with an away team briefing.
Oh, did I forget that?
I think you did, but just
I got a good away mission for today. I don't know why they did that. Yeah.
Also the fact, everybody, we always talk about our Skype channel there that you can come in with us on live. You don't have to be on camera if you don't want to be. You can just come on audio, just to say. To say. It's been a while since we had anybody visit on the Skype channel, so just saying.
And those channels are always open. We always would love to have folks. Thank you for that, Larry. Let's kick off with a little non-spoiler discussion. And today's theme really comes from this relationship right over here in this new episode of Star Trek Lower Decks. Larry, what was your thoughts on non-spoiler thoughts on this episode, as well as this core friendship that we saw?
There was a sequence, because I was pulling grabs, that I was kind of amazed at of all things, I was amazed at the animation. I just thought it got really realistic in a cartoony way. And there was a moment of high crisis for about Thai drama for 2 or 3 minutes. And I was just like, wow, this is really, I don't mean like, oh, the animation is seamless. I mean the way they took, real life action and made it a cartoon, the way the bodies were turning and all that, just has nothing to do with the plot. But I was like, wow, okay. Because there's so many animation shortcuts we see them do because they have to, because it's animation. And there was just one part through there that I was just kind of amazed that the bodies were as articulated and sophisticated. No, I thought it was a cute. For the big picture of Mariner, there are a couple of clues hiding out there. We don't know how much of a career she's had that she's screwed up. And the fact that she has a contemporary who's a captain already, which means that she's in her mid-30s. So Beckett's turning into like she's going to out Harry Kim. It's like, how old is this ensign? And she doesn't have the excuse of being stuck in the Delta Quadrant with a bunch of Maquis giving her, competition. So anyway, that was intriguing.
Oh, poor Harry Kim. Yeah. I enjoyed this episode. One of the things that I like is we're beginning to understand that there is a lot more to Mariner's backstory. I had no idea she was the age that she is, and she might be, as opposed to our other lower deckers, she might be someone who has served much more and is not necessarily in the lower decks because she's newer to Starfleet. She's there for other reasons that have yet to be revealed, which are probably going to be revealed in these next few episodes. I like that relationship. That's not a relationship we've really seen before in Star Trek, Larry. One individual, two contemporaries, both went to Starfleet Academy at the same time, and one is now in a high place of leadership, and the other's career has, in some ways, stalled. We haven't quite seen that. We've seen first officers who don't want to become a captain. We see that kind of stuff. And we talked about Tom Riker last week in our two-parter episode that we did. But we haven't quite seen someone like this. Someone whose career is stuck in some way. And I found that to be very relatable. I think those are issues that many of us struggle with. The comparisons and looking at LinkedIn, where's so-and-so now, and comparing yourself against them. I thought that was quite relatable.
Do you spend much time in the day doing this?
No, but I have worked with many people who do. And I found that happens a lot. What I do find myself comparing myself to is friends on social media. That I do much more. Just in the day-to-day. Like, what are they doing? Where are they right now?
Yeah. And that happens a lot in entertainment. That happens a lot. People have their breaks at different. Some people, they're an overnight success at 50 versus 18 or whatever. But so some of that's a little uneven. But for most of the professions, you're pretty much on the track to match. I was going to say a couple of examples of that slice I can think about. The Tapestry Picard, your favorite episode.
My favorite episode.
The failed Picard, where he's a 50-year-old ensign there.
Right, of course. It's not strictly prime timeline.
Well, no, it's a portrayal, right?
It is a very good portrayal of that. Yeah, absolutely.
And then you think about, in a way, Ro is a dark side version of Mariner. We've mentioned that briefly, but she, screwed up and got bumped back. It's the same way Tom. Any of those Maquis cases where people got thrown back and were, lost. They got off the advancement track for attitude or actions or whatever. But Tom Paris.
And that brings me. That makes me think of another person, just a little side character in Star Trek, James T. Kirk. He also lost a little bit of his rank. It was moved from admiral to captain. In an amazing form of punishment. I love that in Star Trek 4. They're like, well, we have to punish you, but you did save the planet, so let's make you captain again. I love that moment. So with that...
Throwing the book at you. Very
Yeah, a little tiny book. A little pocket-sized book.
Yeah.
But we don't have books, so we're going to throw a little pad at you. So Larry, let's dive in. We're getting some really great comments here about friendships that folks have identified. And let's start with the big one. This is one of the first ones mentioned in our comments, and this is coming from Dan, who says there's great synergy in the Kirk, Spock, McCoy triumvirate. Methinks, and I have to completely agree. When you're talking about these friendships, we have to start with our trio, and there's a lot of combinations there. There's Kirk and Spock. There's Bones and Kirk. There's the three of them. And then there's a little bit of Bones and Spock as well. And they all have their different flavors, and they all have their different ways they play out. But how do you think these core characters of the original series, how do they help each other? How do they help each other to grow?
I was going to say, what do you mean a little bit of Spock and McCoy? I remember
Bones is the reason why Spock comes back.
Well, that's that. So you're very movie focused there, but I'm thinking about roots in the show. It was, I wasn't there in the 60s, but it was a big thing to me after school as a kid, kind of like just watching and enjoying the show. And then it's like a second go round of after, if you do your math and you're watching every day, there's 79 shows, 80 shows, and 5 a week after school or whenever, means that you go through a cycle of the entire show every 3 months or so. So it only took like, if you missed one or two and you didn't realize the order way back in the day when we didn't have references out the wazoo, but you got it that they were progressing somehow through things. You could tell that the uniforms were changing and all of that, and hairstyles were changing. Shatner was putting on weight or not, and but that moment when it comes back around the second or third time and it's amok time. And you're all into the whole what's weird with Spock going on here, and he and Kirk are going to go down to Vulcan, and Spock turns around and says, "I also request McCoy," and he says, "Well, I would be honored, sir." And that's the moment you go, "Aha! They don't really hate each other. That's all. Yeah. They're going to just be mimicked and paid homage to by Quark and Odo in a few years."
That's exactly what you're thinking in the 70s.
That's what I'm thinking in the 70s. Yeah. So as a kid, far wiser souls than I a long time ago figured out that if Spock is the intellect and McCoy is the heart and Kirk is the combination, it's the hands, it's the, what is it? Super, is it ego?
Pathos, logos, ego, superego, ego. Yeah. Take your pick of frameworks, but you have really these three characters who are capturing emotions, logic, and the integration of the two. But right there, what you mentioned about, you are really friends. Something that's unique about Spock and Bones is they're very honest with each other. I mean, these three they're all very honest with each other. But especially Spock and Bones, to the point where they're not really worried about offending each other, even though Bones can be quite offensive and will say all these things. But they know they're friends. They know they work together. They know it's not personal. They're not taking offense to that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and they dig each other. And I sent you a couple of images there. There's always there's a moment. There's a dual scene, or like just successive scenes in Friday's Child, which apparently is an episode that people are having issues with these days. Some people are having issues with these days, but I always love the structure in Friday's Child, where they're on the planet with the Capellans, the people that wear carpets on a hot desert world. But there's a moment where they're doing the thing and they're doing the drama, and McCoy is in with Eliane, the queen, and she's about to give birth, or she's just given birth. She's with the baby, and he's out with Spock thinking about how they're going to hold off an attack by these natives with the Klingon agent with them. And both times, Kirk is when he's with Spock, he's like, I don't know, what can we do? Well, what about, could we use our communicators as some sort of a sympathetic vibration and cause a landslide? And Spock's like, oh, I don't know, the odds against that are pretty high. And Kirk's like, well, forget I even ask. And Spock's like, no, wait a minute. But what gets me is then there's a dual scene where Kirk's with McCoy talking about her giving birth and not wanting the baby. And McCoy says, well, I don't know. I've got to get her cave. She doesn't want the baby. I'm out here by myself. And Kirk is like, well, I'm sorry. Sometimes I expect too much of you. It's like, now, wait a minute. I don't need you. But Kirk finds a way, like you were just talking about. But it was a really cute moment because it's totally parallel. It's Dorothy Fontana writing. It's a totally parallel thing where Kirk is goading both of his friends to do better as they're kind of despairing. In their own ways, they're despairing. and he's poking them to do better, which all through Star Trek is like that's the pinnacle of a friendship that's not a destructive, toxic one, but one where we're kind of, whether where it's a silver platter or
Yeah.
it's a little bit of a poke or whatever, but where we're like, that's what we kind of get into with
Yeah.
this good growth friendship.
Yeah, one example. I mean, what you're speaking to here
I mean,
is
there's lots of
something that
examples of those three, and you had some like the movie era.
there's so many. Yeah, I mean, let me go back. I can pull out a little bit of TOS as well. Not as much as you can, but I've got some. One that really sticks out to me is A Private Little War. It's I am still blown away by this episode that is doing so much social commentary about the Vietnam War at the height of the Vietnam War on TV. And where the episode ends is there's no good solution really, and Bones is sort of he's making a case to Kirk about and asking these really tough questions. And Kirk responds, and he kind of says, like, I don't know what to do. There's no good option here, Bones. We don't have anything, I'm paraphrasing heavily here, but what I think we see there in that scene is such honesty and vulnerability between Kirk and McCoy. We see complete honesty there, and I think that's part of what we're talking about. These friendships that help you to grow is you have a comfort with someone else, and you can share these very vulnerable parts of yourself. Whether saying like, "Hey, you can do better. I know you can do better here," or I have no idea what to do, and I am deeply afraid about this too. Those are two hallmarks that I think that honesty and vulnerability we're going to see through all the relationships we're talking about today.
Yeah, Private Little War, by the way, that cycle, that second or third time through cycle, I don't know. I guess that can still exist now. Back when there was no bloody A, B, C, or D, and you had those 80, and they just cycled around constantly, and that was Star Trek. But that phenomenon of the second or third time you've seen enough collectively, and then an individual show, an episode that you go, now wait a minute, on everything from like, oh look, the badges match the color of the shirt. Oh my God, that level to the specifics of episodes. But yeah, having that time around where you go, now wait a minute, and Private Little War. The last line of the episode is that whole it's a quagmire mood. It's that there is no solution, and so instead of having the happy Star Trek Flintstones ending, as I always used to call it, where everything is all settled and wrapped up with a bow, Private Little War, the last line of the episodes is, "Beam us up, we're very tired."
Yeah.
And that just my little kid brain, after watching the series a couple of passes through, and for that episode to end up that way, I was like, well, I mean, somewhere on the way, I intellectually knew, oh, this is a Vietnam story. And it was right, and we were out of Vietnam barely, but we were all still suffering the hangover of the war in human terms, and economic and financial and all that. But I just remembered thinking, oh.
Yeah.
Good on them for having not a token little happy-dappy ending.
Yeah, if folks haven't seen it in a while, it's definitely worth a rewatch, and just remember the era in which that show was released. That episode was released. It's phenomenal. But let's kind of move forward in the timeline here. Jason mentions Guinan and Picard, and this is one that you and I were talking about very much, Larry.
In this moment here, for one, especially.
Yeah. What episode is this from?
This is from I, Borg.
Oh, of course. There are many moments where Guinan reflects something back to Picard, and it helps things click for Picard. Whether it is from Iborg or whether it is from Q Who to the great Data episode of the second season.
Yeah.
Help me out here, Larry. What the name of the episode I'm thinking of?
The Data on Trial as a property,
which is called
Measure the Man.
Measure of a Man, one of
Yeah.
TNG's greatest episodes. You know, in that moment where Guinan says, "Wow, you could have a whole army of disposable datas," and Picard says, "What are you saying?" And she pushes him further, and Picard realizes Guinan's talking about slavery, and then everything clicks and everything changes in terms of how Picard moves forward. Guinan is sort of the epitome of the kind of friend that we all hope to have in our life. The person who can come to us during these difficult times and push us towards good, push us towards growth. And then we see that come back again in, is it Time's Arrow? Where they're going back in time. Yeah, I love this episode.
18.
I think maybe it's because I'm a Californian. I don't know. I love this episode. I think it's mixed among fandom, meeting Mark Twain and all that kind of stuff, the Wild West stuff.
It was all shot in Los Angeles, though.
Of course. Don't tell me these things. I don't want to know about where.
It was a free K3 and everything.
Well, it's rare now for Star Trek to be shot in Los Angeles. It's usually all up in Canada now. Yeah. But I love that episode, and we see Picard reflecting back to Guinan that we have a friendship that I cannot even define for you, and you have done so much for me, and I'm going to be here, and I'm going to help you, and we're going to get through this. I love their relationship, and I hope we get to see more of it in the next season of Star Trek Picard.
Mm-hmm. Oh, is this a commercial? What?
No, I was like, do you have anything you want to share about?
Well,
about
we went through, and the chat is I've got my chat up here front and center, and it's full of great examples, and some of them are ones I pulled images from. I couldn't do everything, but
do you want to move forward to DS9 then? Because I think Cairo.
Well, I think so. Yeah, we've. There's one more from. Well, if we're doing them chronologically, there's one that I realized was really interesting, that has a dynamic to it, and it's one where starts off with where they start to build up the backstory. Finally, they give Riker some. I always say that Best of Both Worlds is really there. Well, there was no real Riker character until. Bam, two or three things, not just Shelby, but a lot of things are going on in Best of Both Worlds. And one of them is where they realize that Riker has been offered his third command and he's not keen to rush into it. And they suddenly realize, wait, this is the third time. We should make this a character thing. Like, what's wrong with Riker? But there's a scene where he's actually talking to Troy about it. Yeah. And she's trying to do a mini council in 10 Forward. But what I loved about this was not only did they have their prior relationship and they're kind of playing footsie the whole time a little bit and dancing around this, even as they're not together, but she's counseling him as a friend, really not as a counselor, about whether he should do or whether he's like overcompensating for not wanting to and what's wrong. But then within 2 or 3 years more, the tables are turned and she's going for her command authorization. And she's not doing well, and he's counseling. He's poking her, and well, he's trying to help her, show her the way, and mentor her a little bit with that same kind of help. But this is a couple of friends who are much more than friends, who are past Imzadis, that wind up. Then they are eventually finally get over themselves, and they get married through all the twists and turns. I just realized I was trying to think of what's the most fleshed out version of a we have some few couples in Star Trek, but that seems like the time when like the friendy Tom and B'Elanna were banging heads half the time. We didn't see a lot of the time we met Keiko was the week they got married. So right. It's not like we saw a lot of development for couples, and Worf and Dax a little bit before they were married. Some sparked, But and they would counsel each other too. But as far as the couples with a relationship, I just felt like there was a lot there because they had so much time to do it, that it was kind of a unique situation there in Star Trek. So I want to make sure and give a shout out, not for the romance and the will they or won't they end of their relationship, but the time when we saw them helping each other, and not just even professionally. I mean, as friends.
I think that's a really great point.
Well, you're welcome.
What I like about that example is it also highlights some of the complexities of friendships. Sometimes we form romantic connections with people, and then we realize actually we might be better friends, and where that line is can be wibbly wobbly, as we see with Troy and Riker. So that's a wonderful example of two individuals who are helping each other. I also want to share that in the moment counseling that you talk about, Larry, that is very very representative of what it's like to be a therapist, a counselor, a psychologist serving in the military. When you are, especially if you're on a ship, if you're stationed away remotely, the lines of when you're officially a friend versus a therapist.
Must be drawn here and no father.
No, the lines are a bit nebulous and vague. They're definitely not drawn here. So it's that scene kind of shows what it can be like to be serving a organization in that way. That's a great example. Cairo mentioned Nog and Jake from Deep Space Nine, and before we get to Deep Space Nine, a few folks have mentioned Data and Geordi, which I think is a kind of one-way friendship. Like at least from what we see. We see Geordi help Data a lot, and help him to grow. Do you see much of Data helping Geordi to grow, Larry? Do we see much growth?
Data was in there all the time, Geordi and all his girlfriend problems. Don't you remember all those moments where Data was in there helping Geordi with his... No, I guess not.
No.
Okay.
Geordi... I do remember Geordi's girlfriend problems. There's a lot of them. But
it wasn't Data helping him. Yeah, I mean Wesley would do more than
thinking about it, I never realized that, but it does feel like more of a one-way growth in that relationship.
Yeah, and everybody, we're talking about I said we're not talking about the toxic relationships or the destructive relationships, friendships, if you want to say that, but the ones, and there are plenty of friendships in Trek, and Data and Geordi is one of them. They're perfectly fine friendships, and yay, we were trying to, like Mariner and Ramsey in this last episode of Lower Decks, we were trying to look at the friendships that especially, and maybe they're not constant. Those two have been apart for years and just reunited, and if that's the way they were when they were younger, but they fall right back into, at least Ramsey having a moment here to kind of goad Mariner into some self-examination and look at herself as a path forward. And so we were looking at, of all the great friendships that we enjoy watching, which are the ones that had moments of one or both. That's why I was talking about Riker Troy being kind of unique, because it was like on three levels. They mutually went, and then they took it to the next step. But at least as far as the relationships, and maybe it is one-sided. And I even got to thinking, Ali, some of this is... Yeah. It's the one division here might be, because we get into this later, are the two friends really contemporaries, or is there say an age difference? Because when there's an age difference of a little bit, even a half a generation, then you're getting into mentoring or even, mothering, fathering a little bit.
Yeah, and so if we're talking about that, then Wesley comes up. A few different folks have mentioned Wesley and Picard, Data and Wesley, Geordi and Wesley. And, I think that's... It might become a little academic discussion of what's the line between a friend and a mentor, and are we really only talking about age there? Because as in adult relationships, someone can be your mentor and they can be your friend, and it's pretty
Right.
easy. You can I think what we're coming down on is power. Probably there doesn't have to be a power dynamic there, but with age there often is. You
Just
have
because.
less, just because, yeah, you have less power by virtue of being a kid and having less agency and less ability. So I think it's a little hard to be friends with someone who is more empowered or much older than you when you're a kid. I don't think it's impossible, but like I'm thinking about like my aunts and uncles. Would I consider them a friend when I'm a kid growing up, or my parents' friends? Would I consider them my friends? Which is kind of like a Picard and Wesley situation. Picard is not only your mom's boss, but also your mom's friend, and yes, commanding officer of your dad and why your dad died. So it gets complicated. But
Well,
yeah, would you consider
some
that
of the
friendship?
yeah, some of the relationships in real life, but in fiction, even we see like a skip generation, even like not so much grandparents and their grandsons and daughters, but you see your young people who find a person 2 generations beyond them, and they're able to find a bond of some way, and it's like the young person maybe gives the older person a reason to get up in the morning, or to share, they've been cast aside, but they've suddenly got someone who cares about whatever knowledge or experience they had, and you've got somebody young who's actually mature enough, or they stumble into it accidentally, where they're picking up a lot of guidance from this person. Maybe they didn't get from a parent or both parents, or it's just a hole in their life that nobody's able to provide, and they share an interest maybe that transcends the generation. So I mean, it's kind of poignant and kind of sweet when you see. I started to say a long distance relationship over generations, not over space.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
Let's complicate things even further. Zahir brought up an example that I was thinking about too. Picard and Q. Now, at first glance, you might be thinking, "What are you talking about?" Encounter at Farpoint and those first early seasons, Q is such an antagonist figure for the Enterprise, but specifically for Picard. And then you look at episodes like Tapestry, where Q gives Picard this gift of this new understanding. And then you also look at All Good Things. And not only did Q give us probably the greatest finale in Star Trek that we've ever seen, but also gives Picard a very new understanding of himself and of humanity. And there's a lot of times where Q actually really helps Picard to see things in a new way.
mm-hmm.
Is this a friendship, Larry?
Especially as well. That's a good question, Ollie. No, especially as the relationship matures and we get away from the red robe judge
Yes.
moniker, and then there's times when Q is being. I mean, the introduction of the Borg is kind of like tough love, and that's only the second or third.
Absolutely. It's a bit
only
of a
the
warning.
That's only their third meeting.
Yeah.
And the first 2 are really kind of like a power trip and me judge you and all that. And then after Q Who, we get into the whole, I've lost my powers, and we get into the little Q of the week, the Q of the season quirky thing. What's different now? Oh, look, there's a young Q. Oh, look, there's a woman. Oh, there's a son. I mean, across the series. But yeah, there's times when Q seems like he's almost mentoring humanity, and Picard is the representative for that. So there is a personal, Picard never hit me.
Yeah,
There is a personal level to it.
I'm gonna vote no, because they don't spend time together. They don't enjoy their time together. There's a huge power differential. As Cairo says, when we include when we include Picard and Q, I think that would be the fan fiction / name is Pew. But when we include Picard and Q, I think we need to include Cisco and the Prophets, and you can't really do that they're not. There's a massive power differential. They can't just hang out. They can't spend time together. I do love that line though. This little pond of goo. That's a great line. But I would let's move forward, Larry. We've got a lot more Star Trek to talk about, as is always the case. And Victoria, we want to welcome you back. Welcome to your third week on Life Support Live. Very happy to have you here.
I do want to point out, I said it in ours and I said it on Twitter outside the show, but we're having problems with the YouTube channel this week. So I apologize if any of you know people that might be over on YouTube wondering what's going on, if you can message them or whatever. It's YouTube.
Yeah,
it's way.
Christopher, I think, flagged that for us a little bit earlier. It wouldn't be an episode of Life Support Live without some type of tech problem, right, Larry?
Oh, I'm willing to keep living for the day, but right. I hope I think my sync is.
You're looking good. You're looking and sounding good. Yeah. As I hope we both are. So Cairo mentioned a while back Jake and Cisco. So I want to talk about these two because I think
Jake and
Larry,
Nog.
Jake and Nog. Jake and Cisco, I would vote.
Especially that moment right there.
Yes. Yeah, this moment. So I want to make an argument that they might be the ultimate example of friends that help each other to grow. Because not only is there not a power differential between them, they're around the same age, they grow up together, they end up living together briefly on Deep Space Nine, but they help each other to grow in very different ways, and they help each other to understand who they are individually, and they do a lot of things together that you see friends doing. I know a lot of people have mentioned it here, is O'Brien and Bashir, and they're wonderful, and they do help each other to grow, but here we have two characters that we see grow up, and we see really transform from who they are in the beginning of the series to the end of the series. I think their friendship most mirrors this kind of concept we're talking about someone who's there at these pivotal points and does nudge you in a direction towards growing, doing better, becoming more resilient, really staying true to your values. Jake and Cisco, that's the same person. Jake and Nog are they're the best example of that.
Well, and we have a little bit of and what you said, the reason is we're seeing them grow up as well as just have a character development. And especially, we're really seeing Jake grow up, or Sirach growing up, and leaving Nog behind. But yeah, they both, Nog is the street smart one, so to speak. And Jake comes from the legit, even though he rebels against it at times, the Starfleet human world, and they both help illuminate each other in ways that help. They're not just, it's trivia, but, Nog winds up in Starfleet, and Jake winds up not in Starfleet. And they, whether it's dating girls or whether it's life things like that, and staying in and out of trouble and sticking up for the other one, to their parents, to their culture.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Libby has a great comment here that Nog and Jake also help bridge the gap between their peoples. And not only, Libby, I completely agree with you, and they do that in canon, but they also do that for us. I walked into Deep Space Nine really not liking Ferengi. And that was based on what we saw in TNG. And there's such
misunderstood.
Well, I realized that in Deep Space Nine. In TNG, I thought there was such a stereotype, and I know, there were, and I know they were meant to be this great commentary on capitalism, and they were meant to be the great villain of TNG, and it didn't work, so we got the Borg, so I think that was good. But it's not until Deep Space Nine that I think we see the rich diversity of this culture, and you're able to get past the stereotypes that were set up in TNG. And a lot of that is through Jake and Nog and their relationship, and seeing how Benjamin Sisko has his own stereotypes and biases about
Mm-hmm.
Nog and Ferengi, and his concerns about his son fraternizing with this kid. It's really beautiful how you
Yep.
see not only does their friendship help each other to grow, but I think it helps their parents to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And it
Mm-hmm.
helps them to see past, oh, my kid wants to join Starfleet. Oh, my kid is hanging out with these Ferengi. You begin to see the value of these different cultures and how you can actually work together and benefit the greater good by supporting each other. I love that about them.
Yeah, yeah. We should probably move along because we've got so many, and there's more. And yes, see now Voyager initially threw me a little bit. And
Yeah.
there's lots of obviously there's Harry and Tom as a friendship. But again, to me that was
Oh,
like a Jordy Beta.
before we move along, Larry, I think we have to
Oh,
mention one. We have to mention our friends Kira and Dax.
oh, yeah.
Um, we should talk about them, and we had a hard time with Dax because Dax has so many examples. Dax and Cisco, Dax and Quark, Dax and pretty much everyone else on the ship. But let's talk about Dax and Kira just for a brief moment.
What came to mind is all the times, and this may be a little one-sided as well, but all the times Dax was instrumental in getting Kira to, loosen up, and part of this is like, so you were an abused, occupied woman who became a terrorist, who now has the guilt over your terrorism, even though it was seen as virtuous, as earned. So you've got all those issues, but come on, loosen up now. Everything's cool. Oh wait, there's a war on. You have to go back and do that again. But there were the moments like that lighthearted moment there, the holodeck moments, and then another one where they're in the Hubitian baths on Trill, and it's a towel scene, it's a bathhouse scene. But there's moments where Dax is trying to get her to loosen up. I think there's even I'm trying to remember if she even has a little bit of quote unquote counseling around Kira and her love life as it gets complicated over time. It's not quite like a Troy and Crusher, workout session in the Enterprise gym.
Oh my gosh!
But she,
those '80s leotards. Gosh.
But she, it's the 2380s. No, it's not. It's the 60s leotards, the 2360s. Anyway, there's a lot of opportunity there. And Dax and Worf, even as they're courting, but she's pushing Worf to do.
Libby says it well, where she says Dax is a people person who makes friends easily without judging for the most part. And what I like about their friendship is it really seems like Dax is there for Kira when she needs it, the times that she does need to just take care of herself and some self-soothing, or the times where she needs a new perspective. Kira isn't one to open up that much about the life she's lived with other people. But she is able to do that with Dax. And Dax is an incredibly wise person. And Jadzia, of the Daxes, Jadzia is also one who is a bit more playful and wants to help people to have fun and enjoy life. It seems like Jadzia Dax is exactly the kind of person Kira needs in her life right now. And I love this image because it so personifies that. I love their friendship. But I'm sorry, Larry. We're also jumping into Voyager, and I think I know where you're headed. You're headed to a very complex relationship, I think.
Well, again, this got to the first thing that came to mind because I was thinking, there's lots of friendships in Voyager, but to the level that we're talking about, and then like where one person is really helping the other, and the first thing that came to mind was Janeway and Seven.
Yes.
But then I thought, but then also does that veer into, the whole maternal, I'm going to finish raising you, your arrested development as a child, and bring you back, not just your humanity, but, yeah, some of those childish aspects is adultizing. She has the adult intellect, but not not the social graces and all that. Just dealing with people, and she in the guise of making you human again. Since she was when she was like 5 or 6 when she was assimilated, so it's really like an interrupted, like a lot of other traumas that. What do they? That's an old trope. I don't know how true it really is, but the old trope about when you have a trauma, you're frozen at that stage of development in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think that's a trope. We could dive into that a little bit further, but I agree with you that the Janeway Seven relationship is less about friendship and more about mentoring and parenting. That Janeway is fulfilling that figure. I think Dan's
Although
actually,
I think that the friendship catches up by the end.
By the end, yeah, by the end. And if we see them now in season 2 of Star Trek Picard, Admiral Janeway and Seven, they're probably in a different place. But Janeway and Chakotay, Dan mentions Janeway and Chakotay, and I think they are much closer to the friendship than we see other characters on Voyager. What's unique about them is while Chakotay was Janeway's first officer, he was also in his own command before Voyager. He was he was in the Maquis, so it's a very different dynamic than most first officer captains, where they're almost already as equals, even though there is this difference in rank. He's not truly in Starfleet, but he's serving in the first officer role. So I think earlier on in Voyager than we see in other series, there are examples of Chakotay calling out Janeway, of talking to her also in a more friendly way, inviting her to more social things, checking in on her. There's a lot more of that than I see with the other first officers, maybe with the exception of Spock and Kirk. But I think Dan is right on here. They have much more of a friendship than we usually see with that type of dynamic.
Well, just sitting here realizing it, a lot of not so much Picard Riker, they may be the closest, but Kirk Spock had cultural difference. Cisco and Kira, cultural difference, where they came, and
moving on to
Archer
Enterprise
and T'Pol,
as well. Yes.
Cultural difference,
Yes. There's a few different examples. Let's jump into Enterprise here. There's a few different examples we have. And Phlox and T'Pol is one of the ones we picked up on, and here I think they're almost drawn to each other out of necessity. They're two aliens relative to all the humans on the ship. They're They're the two aliens. They're also the two space veterans. Phlox has served in this doctor exchange program. Phlox has seen a lot more of the galaxy than any human on the ship. And same thing with T'Pol. T'Pol always grew up in a world that knew of everything else that's out there. Whereas the humans were just sort of opening their eyes to that. So these two are able to connect and support each other in living with all these humans. And I really like that relationship that they have.
Yeah, but also, T'Pol confiding a lot of as her very standardized Vulcan life started blowing up the minute she got involved with these humans, including parts of her Vulcan background. When the renegades show up and the whole thing with mind melding, and then much less her relationship with Trip takes off, and her addiction. All of these issues, like Phlox was kind of the logical person for her to turn to, and he's doing it out of, they don't have a counselor. He's doing it. He's kind of counseling as a doctor generically would, but it's handy, and she doesn't have to let her guard down to Archer or Trip as far as, colleagues in a lot of ways. And Trip's the object of some of this. So yeah, Phlox is great about that. T'Pol back at him a little bit. There's a couple of times, but it's real. That's really more of a one way. T'Pol, Phlox wasn't often that vulnerable, aside from when he had to do his when the animals were in danger, or when the whole ship depended on him to be awake. He was the only one up and around. Or, I mean, there were two or three times when Phlox was really vulnerable, but most of the time he was one of the stronger personalities on the ship, and stable.
One relationship I think that is really interesting is what Zahir mentions, Shran and Archer, especially as they fight common enemies and they co-found the Federation, but their relationship is also super complex. Zahir, I would say, we got to put the Vulcans in there as well, with the founding of the Federation and the Tellarites, as well as who am I missing here? Who am I missing? Tellarites, humans.
Andorians and Vulcans.
Andorians. Okay, I'm not missing anyone. I got them all.
I'm missing more Tellarites, but that's a whole other soapbox. But okay.
Jared, can we add that to the life support drinking game? Anytime Larry mentions Tellarites, I think should be also on there. The relationship here between Shran and Archer starts in a difficult place. But
they're adversaries or enemies.
They're very much adversaries.
Or Shran, they're enemies. Archer wouldn't care, but
Archer's like, we're humans. We love everyone. We're good. Can't we just be friends? Whoa. Yeah. The thing that happens though is Shran understands that Archer is a decent person, and he is a person of his word. That you can trust this person, and that builds this friendship that we see evolve over the course of the show. Mostly, we see it evolved in the 4th season, but that's something else. Thank you, Manny Koto, for that. The thing that happens between these two characters is they often come to each other's aid, so they are quite literally saving each other's life a few different times, but they push each other. In similar way that we see in the original series, where Bones and Spock are sort of able to insult each other a little bit, we see that with Shran calling Archer pink skin and all of that. We see them evolve, and I actually think they have a wonderful friendship by the end of the show. We're
sneering our way to progress. That's what we're doing.
Yeah. I would be amiss if I didn't mention Porthos and Archer, Larry. I think that is that a friendship? I think we can probably, anyone who's had a pet will probably say yes, absolutely. Is that
a friendship, or is Archer just enabling Porthos with all the cheese?
He's giving him a lot of cheese. That cannot be good for the air quality aboard
That's
the
a
Enterprise.
tiny ship, and for him to be cutting that much cheese is just not. I don't know.
Ooh, but
I know. That one kind of stinks. Okay.
Dan mentions Trip and Reed, and I think they're kind of they're the two humans that are trying to they're exploring all this space yes.
Okay, well, you're kind of intruding on my K3, but okay.
We will TBD on the K3 there. And let's kind of round things up.
I'm seeing an awful lot flying by here, though. Did we have another one from Voyager besides?
I don't think so.
I mean, people throwing out all kinds of and again, it's this thing of lots of relationships.
I think Torres and Paris. Yeah. I think Torres and Paris are the other one we kind of mentioned that we could explore more.
Yeah, well, I mean, like Tom and Harry, but it's like, it's the college roommate kind of friendship. I don't know. I mean, there's times when they help settle the other one down, especially, or they would. I don't know. It feels like, now I'm just thinking off the top of my head, it feels like Harry and Tom and Harry may get the award for the friendship where they both told each other what they ought to do, but neither one did it.
I think that's pretty fair.
I don't know. I'm just totally like off the top. Somebody may have something up, but just trying to think of it in a rush here, because I was kind of not discounting their friendship, but again, this filter we put on about what are the really constructive, progressive friendships that were for one or both people. Dan Leckie says the Doctor and Kes, which is very true.
Yeah.
Kes helping the Doctor develop. Yeah.
Yeah.
and that's a V'ger.
It's a V'ger. Well, if you want to talk about V'ger, I forget who mentioned it earlier, but there was a motion picture example. But we got 2 more series, and then we still have our other segments. So let's jump to these quickly. I think the biggest example in Discovery is of Michael Burnham and Tilly. They really have a wonderful friendship. And yeah, Larry. Go for it. You had some great.
No, I was going to say two-way. You've got right there. You've got Michael, goading her on to get into the command training program. The jogging is a great little metaphor for it. But then also on a personal side, you've got Tilly being maybe the most. They don't have a counselor. They have a visiting admiral come in and counsel on Discovery, but it's a war in the first season. But then you've got Tilly kind of helping Burnham reintegrate into relationships after she's into her shutdown mode after prison, after she's been in the Hooskow. And I sent you the one image a couple of times there where she's really trying to get Michael and Ash together and open those doors. And she's just trying to get her to open up to people in general, but especially those two. Anyway, I just thought that moment there was really telling. Mama Tilly is sitting there overseeing. She's matchmaking there, but in a healthy way that's healthy for overall for Michael, not just in that one instance.
Tilly's responsible for one of my most frequently used GIFs when I'm messaging with people, which is she's in the mess of the Discovery, and I don't mean that. I don't mean the mess of Discovery. I mean the mess.
It's been a mess. There's been times.
Oh, but the mess hall of the Discovery, and she's eating, and she's looking at Burnham and says, "I love feeling feelings." I think that's so well. That so captures who she is, and she is someone who has such a she's such a stand-in for so many of us who would be on the ship and would be so excited to be serving on a starship and to be in Starfleet. And that is, it's something that helps other characters, especially Burnham, who are going through so much to open up a little bit more. I think she's a wonderful example of that. And there's one more character one more relationship we wanted to talk about going into Star Trek Picard is Picard and Raffi. We could easily talk about Picard and Riker, and we see their friendship. But the new relationship here is Raffi and Picard.
Right. Well, part of the problem with Picard is we've only had the 10 episodes with them, and we haven't got to see a lot.
Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Seven and Raffi.
Yeah.
But,
yes.
And I'm not talking about the time they served together, although they probably had a unique friendship because she calls him JL, which makes it different than anything else that we know of from Picard's life. But as far as
quick, Larry, are you pro JL or are you nay on JL?
I'm fine with JL.
Okay.
Good grief. Let's find some diversity in relationships. I like JL. I do think we heard a lot of JL. There's one episode where I think she mentions it 50 times. But I'm pro JL. I do I like what you're saying. They haven't been together for 8 years or whatever it's been, 8 or 10 years. So let her JL a little. And she's in a very, this whole time, Raffi, is it before or after she goes through her trauma with her son and the grandbaby that she's not going to see?
Well, we're not sure how that time
and her confrontation with her drug, Raffi has a rough time here. And I first was going to say Raffi and Rios even. He's a good friend to her in this kind of a relationship where somebody's, rather than enabling somebody, they're really trying to help clean them up for what, psychologically, dependency-wise, whatever's going on. And she's a mess, which is why she's amazing. We finally figure out she runs, moment when she handles the subterfuge, she calls her old friend and really burns up all her brownie points that were left over to get something. And don't ever call me, okay, here, but don't ever call me again. Which is oh my God, another part of my life is blown up and I'll never get it back. But she sacrificed it, but we see her pull it together by the end. But a lot of the 10 episodes is seeing her hitting bottom, figuring out why she's hit bottom, and she's hit bottom for 3 or 4 different reasons, and watching and the guy that she starts off blaming and mad at and angry for and feeling ignored by is Picard, and he winds up helping her. But then a lot of them are poking at Picard and helping him get caught up with, helping him learn his current position and place in the world. And so it's almost a lot of like a string of old man jokes that they're okay, Boomer, that they're doing with him. But it's kind of cute watching some of the younger ones that know he's an icon and a legend get him. That's what. And then the times he gets to surprise people, like navigating the hall of control for the ship, and gets to pull a not so old and decrepit as you thought, which is the old Picard. But anyway, I think that dynamic of the two of them may be of all of the options you might have around Raffi or around Picard, that might be the one that's the most stable, and even with its instability, it may be the one that's the most healthy. Because Agnes is a good one, but she's got her own agenda, even though she doesn't realize that she's
Agnes is complicated. What I really like about they're all complicated. What I really like, there's a good debate happening in our comments section about.
You thought Discovery was full of broken people? Hold my beer, says Picard. Okay.
Well, Dan mentions that. But doesn't she end up with this dependency because of Picard? And Cairo is sort of echoing that it's Picard's selfishness that got himself thrown out of Starfleet and probably led to some of Raffi's problems as well.
Yes.
Now, I think this is true.
About what we see in the episode. Yes, that's all backstory, and that's all very important, and it's why they're there. So part of this is him helping heal some of the damage that he and others caused.
And that's where I think Raffi specifically, I think, is one of the greatest new additions in Star Trek, because she is so human as we are right now. I mean, to see a Star Trek character...
And by human, you mean messed up.
By human, I mean like us right now. We're not all that perfect, idealized, aspirational, the next generation versions of ourselves. And I love Star Trek for giving us that aspirational goal, but it is an aspirational goal. It is, I would love to move beyond scarcity as a post-scarcity economy. I don't see that happening anytime soon, but I want to work towards something like that. Same thing with Raffi. To see a character who is struggling with substances is fantastic. I think especially during coronavirus, so many humans are struggling with substance use. To see a character who is struggling with connection with her family, that is something that so many of us are struggling with. To see a character that has a complex friendship with someone else who she very much loves and also despises. I mean, which of us hasn't felt that way about a friend that you really care about, and they also really piss you off because they did XYZ thing? It's such a relationship that speaks to what the world is like, and Picard is coming to terms and trying to realize the mistakes he's done very slowly over cups of many decaffeinated Earl Grey teas, is realizing that, but he's coming to understand that.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at the clock and realizing we've come to Picard, so we've kind of come our full circle, but we really should jump into...
We really should. We had a lot to say, apparently, about friendships, but I'm going to do a quick counselor's log here, and in the away mission, I'm going to talk more about how to get to some of these types of friendships that we've been talking about, friendships that help you grow. But first, I want to talk about why are friendships so important. And to talk about that, we kind of need to talk about what happens when you don't have friendships, when you are feeling a lot of loneliness or isolation, something many of us might be experiencing right now.
Oh,
right?
Pandemic Pete, yes. Okay.
Right. one of the things that's been most surprising to me is understanding the research on isolation. And to sum it up, feeling isolated. And feeling isolated is different than actually being isolated. You can feel isolated even if you're surrounded by people. You can feel very much alone even if you're living with other people. But when you feel isolated over a long period of time, it's as bad for you as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So why is that? Why is feeling alone and isolated so bad for your physical health? People who feel isolated are much more vulnerable to a whole number of physical health problems, let alone psychological problems. And one of the best things across mental health is getting support from other people. It doesn't mean you have to talk about the stuff you're going through. It can mean you're just playing a video game together or you're watching Star Trek together. But to feel supported in the way that you want to be supported, it's one of the best things in mental health. And not having that support, not only is it bad for your mental health, but bad for your physical health. Why? That's what I want to dive into just for a moment. It turns out that when you are alone, feeling isolated, you never quite feel safe. You never quite feel comfortable. And you're much more stressed. You're much more alert. Your shields are up. It's almost like you're in a constant state of yellow alert. And what that does is it really impairs your immune system. Your immune system just isn't working as well as it normally should, because when you're under a lot of chronic stress, that shuts off your immune system. When you're anxious, when you're afraid, your immune system is temporarily shut off because your body's prioritizing fight or flight systems. So when you're isolated, it's like you're under a constant state of yellow alert and your immune system just doesn't function well. So friendships are incredibly important, not just for all the reasons we mentioned here, but they literally keep you healthy. They keep you feeling a bit more calm, a bit more safe, and we'll talk about how to get those when we get to the away mission. But I just wanted to share that little detail, Larry, because I think it's important.
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think are we at K3 time now?
Yeah, speaking of little details, let's jump into the K3 factor. The little details you might not know that have a big impact on Star Trek. How about that, Larry?
That's okay. Okay. Well, and I didn't mean to snap your head off because again, Reed and Trip, Reed and Tucker. I love how we go back and forth between last names, first names in Star Trek.
Right.
I never got why in the next gen scripts everyone was Picard, Riker, like on the dialogue lines. It's Troy, Riker, Picard, LaForge, Data, and then Beverly. I'm like, okay. It would have made more sense to have it be Crusher and then Wesley, and it was Wesley. But anyway, I guess that was to avoid confusion. There's a mini K3 right there. No, this was on Enterprise. The whole Reed, and I want to say Dominic, the whole Reed Tucker relationship was in the mold of your great, O'Brien, Bashir, Harry, and Tom, and all that. This is from 2 Days and 2 Nights. And this is what we think of the buddies from Enterprise, and they're the buddies, right? What's interesting here, and K3 once again is where we do a deep dive into background from my end of things, from Trekland, the Dr. Trek way. What's amazing is when the show was conceived.
Larry said the Dr. Trek way. Have you ever seen How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying?
What are we?
I play it the Dr. Trek way. No. Have you? No. I play it the company way. Whatever the company says, that's okay. That's for you, Jared. I know you were waiting for a little sing-along. Sorry, Larry, I just had to say that.
That's a sing-along or a drinking game reason. Okay.
Sorry about that, Larry. I just could not resist.
If I'm going to be interrupted for anything, it better be How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. That's the only... No, so here's the thing. When the show was conceived, Trip was the number 3 character. Yeah. and he's the engineer, and he's laid back and Southern and all of that. Although his nickname was just going to be his nickname was going to be Spike. Anyway, the original,
Really?
but yeah, it was good. It was his name was it was still it was going to be Charles, which it is, but his nickname we're going to call him Charlie, and they were going to call him Spike because it's yeah. Then
Charlie, I'm okay with, but Spike just
Spike
does
was
not
his
fit
original
that
nickname.
character.
Yeah, they wound up
Wow.
with Trip, so for the third. So, but the point is, his original best buddy was supposed to be. Can you put the picture up? You see,
If I
see
can
it in the
find
pilot.
it. Right here?
Yeah, his
Yeah.
buddy was supposed to be Mayweather. That's why this scene is written this way in the pilot, where Mayweather's in the anti-grav sweet spot, and Tucker comes and finds him. Trip comes and finds him. They actually had the two of them to be the buddies because Reed was going to be this weird, quirky guy who loved bombs and things and was awkward around women, and they were all competing for space. In fact, I've got one more here to throw up at which proves my point. It's only text, but hopefully it's entertaining. Do you see it?
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah.
3, 2, 1, engage.
There. Okay, that's a little small maybe. But basically it's there. It says Charlie's closest friend is Mayweather, the helmsman. But everything you think about the two of them later, the shuttle pod 1 moments and all of that was originally supposed to be Mayweather because Reed was going to be this off-put Brit like demolitions devil who was more interested in hanging out with his armaments than with anybody, men or women, and was an odd duck, basically an odd duck that was too odd duck to be friends with anybody. And they even, to the point where they had a competition for space and resources. Like he's stashing, the ship is tiny and he's stashing weapons everywhere, like in the way. He's taking up empty places in engineering with his weapons, and they're supposed to bang heads. So the K3 here is, be careful what you watch later on, because it didn't start off that way. We think of them as the great friendship of Enterprise, and the guys, they do conventions together. They host karaoke at some of the conventions. Connor and Dom are Connor and Dom. They're a great team, and that's partly why. It's another case of something on paper, and that was all written way before casting was done, before anything was shot. So that's another case of whatever goes down on paper. A lot of times what you see on screen, like Terry and Michael hitting it off, sparking as Dax and Worf when they brought Worf on the DS9, and no one saw that coming, but they couldn't resist what they saw on screen that was unintentional.
Or Odo and Kira, the chemistry between those two actors was just undeniable.
That was not heck, the McCoy and Spock was totally accidental too.
Yeah.
And came and sprung off the screen. So anyway, we're talking about friendships, and now I got to mention them, but not all friendships evolve as they were intended.
That's a great reveal. Again, as most K3 factors, I am surprised. I am not shocked. I am surprised. I am not shocked or appalled, but I am surprised this week. Quick question coming in from Dan: is this image from the series Bible? Is that where, or is this the pilot? Where?
No, that's the Bible. Yeah.
Cool. There we go. There we have it for our K3 factor of this week. Larry, while we're talking about K3 factors, Trekland is always a great place to do a deep dive into Star Trek canon. It seems like you got something interesting coming up very soon.
Thank you for doing this. I wanted to say it now before we got to the end of the show. So a week, not tomorrow, but a week from Sunday, the 27th, I'm co-hosting an event virtually for the Improvised Generation, which is the LA narrative improv group set in their show is set in the next gen era. And they all play characters. Like this year, there's 12 in the troupe. They've expanded. They all have characters. This is their 6th season. They usually do 8 shows. They usually do live shows. Like everybody else, they've gone virtual. But yes, it's like, how can they be improv if they've got characters? Well, the situation, the plot is improv, and they keep up with their canon. It's awesome. It's awesome. And they do it in a black box. They usually have sound effects. They have wonderful people running things. And it's improv. They start off with a word from the audience, and then they do a whole hour-long episode, including opening titles. Anyway, if you're ever in LA, during one of their seasons, it would be great to see it. Of course, it'd be great to see anything live anymore. But this year they're going virtual. Their launch event this year is virtual, and they're doing a cocktail party, partly because people have loved the lifeline of virtual panels and virtual conventions, but I think a lot of people are suffering a little virtual fatigue on virtual panels as much as they've been welcomed this. So this is actually going to be a cocktail party. So Aliza and I are she's in the company. She plays the captain here, Captain Tompkins. But we're co-hosting it. There's lots of people coming through for 5-10 minutes. There's 2 or 3 groups, but a lot of it is one-off. A lot of actors, a lot of people Armin Sherman and Kitty, John Billingsley, Dan Curry, who's got a new book coming out, who was visual effects producer. All of their cast are going to be there. Mary Chieffo, is it Tamita Tamblyn, who played Commodore O this year in Picard? Several, a few more actors, and a lot of folks, a couple of authors. Anyway, it's gonna be a lot of fun. It's gonna be people cycling through,
and that's available for free.
It's all free. It's
all
3 hours a week from Sunday. It's 3 to 6 Pacific, 6 to 9 Eastern. I think even the Europeans can catch it midnight and 1 a.m.-ish window. So it'll be a lot of fun. Yeah. It's on Twitch.
Sounds like a ton of fun. Yeah.
It's on the Outpost 13 channel on Twitch. So, I just wanted to spread that out and let everybody know. Hopefully it will be a lot of fun and a slightly different format than we're used to. So just throwing that out there.
Yeah, wonderful. So with that, let's jump into the away mission. This is the part of the show where I give you one takeaway, at least one takeaway, to help you apply some of what we're talking about to your life. And Larry, this one is a little bit of a challenge for me because usually when I talk about friendships, I talk about strategies that you can use to become closer to other people. And a lot of those strategies are now more difficult in this world of a pandemic. But I still want to outline them and then give people some ideas on how they can do it in pandemic times. So when it comes to becoming a friend, and I've got a whole video on this on the Psych Show about how to make new friends. It's one of my early episodes, so the quality is a little cringeworthy to me, but you can still check it out if you want a deeper dive into this subject matter. But we're more likely to become friends with someone that we see on a regular basis, someone that becomes more familiar to us. So the first step is often to become more familiar, to become a regular presence in the person's life. So that might mean you might become more familiar by taking a class together or working together, seeing each other in the coffee shop all the time in the pre-pandemic times. Even here, we feel closer to everyone that we see on a regular basis. And we're seeing so many of our regulars here, Jared and Dan, Zahir, Scott, Libby, Victoria, it's great to see you becoming more of a regular, right? Like the more you see people, the more comfortable you become with them. And then the big trick to becoming friends with someone and to deepen that friendship, it comes down to 2 different things. One is to see that person in a different context than where you usually see each other. So if you're 2 coworkers, going to get coffee is going to deepen your friendship because you're now doing something outside of the context where you always see each other. If you go to class together, going to see a movie, again, in the pre-pandemic times, is one way to deepen that friendship because you're doing something together in a different context than you usually see each other. That's one.
Did you know that most first grade teachers don't live in their classroom?
I did not know that. This is news to me. I thought all teachers live in their
Did you have that
classes.
moment when you were like, 6 or 7,
totally.
and you see your teacher out in a store, and you're like,
yeah, and it just freaks you out. You're like, what are you doing here? You're not supposed to be outside of school. No, absolutely. And the second thing that deepens a friendship is secret sharing, is taking a risk and sharing something with that person. this is what really deepens a friendship, because what you're communicating to that other person is, I trust you with this information. And it does take some courage to share something that you might not feel 100% ready to share with that person. We're not talking about deep, dark secrets, skeletons in your closet. We're talking about things that just make you a little bit more vulnerable, that you haven't spoken to that other person. But typically what happens is not only are you communicating, I trust you with this information, but it makes it safer for that other person to reveal more about who they are. So these are the two ways where we deepen friendships. We see each other in different contexts, and we share more things about ourselves that make us vulnerable. And the more you do that, the more likely you are to get to those relationships like we see with Jake and Nog, where they are really able to help each other grow, because you've created a framework of trust and of support with each other. It doesn't happen overnight, but we can all take small steps to do something with other folks to deepen our connection with them. Now, Larry, it's hard to do all that in pandemic times. It's hard to do all that when you can't quite see the other person. Right. So my one advice I have for folks is, if there is someone in your life, and we don't need a lot of friends. Remember all that stuff I said earlier about the immune system and how unhealthy it is to be isolated? Well, you only really need one friend. You only really need one friend that you can share more of who you are.
You only need one. Wait, that's...
All it takes is one friend.
For some reason I confuse you only live twice with you only need one. I don't know.
Hey, I'll take it. It works. It's working for me.
No one could friend just one. Okay, that's Lay's potato chips, but okay.
What was I gonna say here?
I totally.
No, but it was a lovely derail, Larry. It was wonderful.
That's a new. I want that on a button for live support. But it was a lovely derail.
I think that summarizes a lot of our show. I think that summarizes a lot.
I know a lot has been spewed here, but that's my vote for like one of our top. Suddenly, out of the blue.
I mean, this whole show is a lovely derail from our normal Saturday mornings watching cartoons.
Lovely third rail.
Yeah.
By the way, why I've stopped you, as you were enumerating a lot of our regulars, I was sitting there the whole time going, oh, who are you going to leave out? Who are you going to leave out? And Cairo is going, I guess I'm highly irregular.
Oh, no, Cairo! You're the best. Cairo, you are my favorite Twitcher of Life Support Live. You're my favorite member of the Life Support Lifers on Twitch.
Christoph is in here somewhere, so yeah.
We love you. We love everyone on the show, everyone who's here. I was going to say something. Yes, Larry. So it's hard to do things in different contexts, but here's something you can do right now, even in pandemic times, is most of what we do is we see each other face to face like this on these online platforms. If you see someone often in a group context, if you can do more of a one-on-one and have a shared activity, whether you are watching something together and maybe just texting back and forth about it. Maybe you're watching a Star Trek episode together or some other movie, or maybe you're both having a meal together, you're sharing some coffee with each other, or maybe you're playing some kind of game together. Having some kind of structured social activity that's different than the usual way that you interact is one way we can deepen friendships right now. The other way we can deepen friendships is just sharing something with that other person that you normally wouldn't share, that you might be a little bit uncomfortable sharing. That's also one way to kind of deepen the friendship. It's hard though right now, Larry, because so many people are struggling, so many people are dealing with so much, and it's hard to know what can I share, what's the line when you can't see someone. It's very hard to do this, but
it's hard to bond in the trenches when there are no trenches.
Yeah, well, it feels like we're in the trenches and we're not, and we are. and it's a very strange
Just
place.
we're all
Yeah.
solo, well, unless we've got our significant others with us or whatever. But yeah, we're
Yeah. Yeah. So, let's open up those hailing frequencies. Let's kind of catch up on our text. Let's
I've been
go.
I've been doing really good this week on the chat, and a lot of good chats been running. Somebody, maybe more than one, Dan's mentioned it. I think somebody else did too. Can't believe we haven't mentioned Bashir and O'Brien, but we did in the
Yeah.
and they helped. We talked just last week about Bashir helping O'Brien kind of come to the fact that he was enjoying his mail time to get away from in a healthy way, to have some apart time from Keiko and the kids.
Yeah, we talked a little bit more
yeah.
about them in that week's episode, and if we have to choose between talking about Jake and Nog versus O'Brien and Bashir, I think I'm going to choose Jake and Nog over them. Just
for this
topic.
Yeah.
I think the growth between O'Brien and Bashir happens centrally around two things. So one is Bashir is quite helpful in helping O'Brien to face the problems in his marriage and support him in that. There's a lot of growth there. And then O'Brien is quite helpful in helping Bashir to face all of the fallout of being revealed as genetically engineered, and then of Section 31, and thinking through these very difficult choices that Bashir has to make. Actually, O'Brien does that a lot, helping Bashir to think through tough decisions, whether it's about medicine.
I'm going back to the beginning. Yeah, I'm going back to the beginning and trying to remember when Bashir was such a babbling green idiot, that he pissed off Kira. It was all I'm the fresh guy out of the academy and I'm going to save the galaxy. That arrogance.
Yes.
I'm trying to think if O'Brien, because there's the times when O'Brien was pissed off too, when he's babbling, and the scene in the runabout when I think it's Storyteller, when he's going on and on and on and on, and Bashir and O'Brien is like, "Oh, senior officer, I'm a non-com." He's rolling his eyes, but he can't see him roll his eyes. And I'm trying to think if Bashir got through that because of better writing. No, if Bashir got through that because of O'Brien, or if it was just the world wore him down of this.
Yeah.
But anyway, but that's in there too somewhere.
Yeah. One of the things that I think O'Brien and Bashir do better than probably most of the friendships we've talked about today, Larry, is fun. The two of them have a ton of fun together, and we see that. I don't know if we see...
And it's mostly safe.
Yeah. I don't know if we see as much fun. Trip and Malcolm have a lot of fun, but not so safe. I don't know if we see as much fun with the other characters. Spock, Kirk, and McCoy. McCoy and Kirk have a lot of fun, and Spock is sometimes trying to downplay that.
Well, until you get to the start, the campfire beans. I mean, kind of.
Oh, I love the marshmallow
in live. That it's like, oh look, it's the token nice scene in this whole movie.
Yeah, I forgot to mention. I think two of the most powerful examples of this, Larry, you set this up for me, and then I just completely avoided it. You threw me the ball, and I looked that other way as a ball came out. You said you had some...
lol.
Yeah. That lol gift, I think, is a perfect example of what 2020 feels like. Of the ball being thrown at lol, and it just does it hit lol in the face, and then lol raises their hand. Yeah. That's 2020. And
Data gets a...
yeah. I love. Maybe someone could post that GIF in the comments below. I love that GIF so much. Oh my gosh. But yeah, you said, Ollie, you have some good motion picture examples, and the two I wanted to say that I think are some of the most beautiful examples of friendship come thanks to Spock and Kirk. And we see that not only in Star Trek 3, where Spock sacrifices himself to help his friends. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. and we see that brings a tear to me eye every time I see the ending to Wrath of Khan. To then Kirk saying the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the needs of the one outweigh the needs of the many. And Spock is like, what? In Star Trek 3, when the whole crew comes together to save him. To then Star Trek 6, when Kirk says, let them die. And the shock of that, which feels very much like the shock of A Private Little War. Mm-hmm. And Spock is his morals and his North Star and his compass saying, no, we got to do the right thing. Look, I know this is personal. I know the Klingon bastards killed your son. I know that.
Say it three times.
Yeah. I'll never forget him for the death of my boy. Rura Pente. Now we can go on and on. I love that film. But Spock is reflecting back. Look, we gotta do better. We gotta look past these differences. This is for the sake of of peace in this quadrant. Those are some of the best examples of a friend who's there for you and pushes you and makes the hard decision because they love you, they care about you, and they know you can be better. You know, those are some of my favorite examples throughout all of Star Trek.
Well, okay.
A couple of things I want to mention that haven't been mentioned yet. I think Dan also mentioned the Kelvin timeline, and we see a few different examples.
Yes, I had a big example from the Kelvin.
Oh, let's go Kelvin. Let's go through the black hole with the red matter. Yeah,
no, the big one from Kelvin is Pike and Kirk. To me. And yes, it gets into that separation by years. I totally meant to send you an image for this. It was like, yay, I thought of a Kelvin thing. I usually ignore the Kelvin universe because it's so pointless. But that was actually one that fits our theme today. So. Yeah, no,
I love that. It very much does start with that power differential, but as we see it evolve, especially in Star Trek Into Darkness, you get the impression that there's more. There's more to their relationship than just the power differential there. And then we really see the evolution of a friendship between Spock and Kirk. We see the complex relationship between Uhura and Spock. We see the development of a friendship with McCoy and Kirk. I know you're not a big fan of it, but I like the line, all she left me with were my bones. I do love that line, although I know it breaks previously established.
No, it's just okay. They did it on the spur of the moment while they were filming, which there was nobody there to go, okay, if we're gonna do that, then let's make it like as big a point difference as Kirk's dad dying in this. Vulcan is gone and Kirk's dad died. These are the hallmarks of. Okay, fine. Anyway, off that soapbox. Okay.
We haven't talked about this, but Zahir mentions the senior officers on the Enterprise D having their poker night. We haven't talked about multi-person friendships beyond just like two people.
Just friendships. Okay.
Yeah, well, yeah. We're not talking about Battlestar Galactica here.
We talked about the classic triumvirate from original series.
Yeah, we did talk about that. Yeah, we didn't really talk about the senior staff as friends there. We see this actually to tie this all back. We see this with Lower Decks, with the series, not the episode. Although you see it in the episode as well from TNG. But the group support of each other, that we're in it together, we're working together. And that's just a little bit different flavor than what we've been talking about with these other friendships. Zahir, that's a great pick right there.
We're having a lot of murmuring in the chat about what about constructive friendships that help you grow among the adversaries. I was also
Oh,
trying to think about guest stars and one-off roles, but also the adversaries.
yeah. Any that come to mind, Larry?
Well, they mentioned that people are mentioning the Duras sisters, but they're sisters.
Hmm.
I don't know how they're pushing each other to be better. I mean, the whole idea of this is kind of inverted. If now the best adversaries aren't
And
bad,
now we
bad
have a weapon
guys.
of unlimited power! Yeah.
Are they adversaries or allies or just sitting out there? Between another relationship we didn't mention was, and I meant to pull an image from this. Oh, I thought I did. Maybe I didn't. Worf and Martok.
Yes, yes, yes. Worf and Martok is a wonderful. It starts again with that. You could make an argument: is there a power differential there? But I think since they're both serving, one serving the Klingon
Well,
Empire,
it
one
comes
serving
and
the
goes.
Federation.
There's
Yeah,
one
it comes
minute.
and goes. Yeah.
1 minute, Martok is like, "Don't feel like an orphan. Be in my house. Be in my family." And he's looking up. But then at the end, Worf is like, "No, no, you be Chancellor."
Folks, I think we have a life support live first here. I think that's the first time I've heard you do Klingon, Larry.
Oh,
And
is that
I
what
have.
you call that?
I think that's what you call that. That's
That
what you're
wasn't just
doing.
growl. Okay, I was trying to do my JG, JG Hertzler, who just did a voice.
Yeah, he's got the Romulans have no honor. I'm sure. I don't know if he said that. I can just assume he said that because like every Klingon at some point has said that.
Well, yeah. No,
But this gets
it's
to
just Worf.
this gets to siblings too. Like he basically becomes
Sorry,
like a
We
brother.
said friendships.
Well, yeah. Now, can you be a friend with a
Yes,
sibling?
you can be a friend with your.
You can definitely not be friends with a sibling. And then we have complex relationships like Spock and Burnham. Now, they're adopted siblings.
Which
and-
someone said in the chat.
Yeah, someone mentioned that. And they don't start off very much in an amicable way. But where we see them evolve in Star Trek Discovery is I don't know if we can call them friends, but they do definitely have a respect and understanding and affection for each other. And the Duras sisters, they're siblings here. But I definitely...
Twisted sister sibling.
Twisted Sisters. That feels like a reference to something else. I don't know what that is.
A band?
Maybe. I
mean, that's
growing up, my brother and I have a 10-year age separation. Growing up, he was always much more of a half brother, half father kind of figure. But as we got older, we definitely formed a friendship, and I enjoyed spending my time with him together in a way that felt more like a friendship that's complicated by all the other stuff going on in our families. So I think it's possible to be friends with a sibling. Yeah. I think Zahir had... Oh, yes. Tomalak and Picard. They respect each other. Probably not friends. They're not hanging out. They're not having Romulan ale together, although I would love to see that episode of Star Trek Picard.
I mean, part of the problem here is we're getting into the weeds. A lot of the adversaries, just like good guy guest and good girl guest stars, we just don't see enough of them to see them bond. And Zahir says, Wayun Dukat and the female changeling. It's like, well, DS9 is one of those rare times when you saw everybody enough that you actually got a sense of interaction in detail and over a long period of time. So I don't know how Wayun Dukat and the female changeling were making each other smarter or better.
And it gets to the power stuff too. Like Wayun is created to worship the changelings, so it's in the founders. So I think it gets complicated there. But Zahir reminded me of Garrick and Bashir and their relationship, and they are now. It's complicated
Go
there
on.
too. Yeah. Larry's just waiting for me to deal with this one. Now, how much attraction is there, and how much is it love, especially from Garrick towards Bashir? We don't know. In canon, we don't know. Out of canon, that's always how the actor played it. At the same time, we see the two of them push each other at different moments. I would say it's more Garrick pushing Bashir and helping him to get out of his naivete about how the galaxy works. But there is something there. Bashir and Garrick both look forward to their meals together. And I would say that is also a reflection of the complexity of relationships that we have. How many people have had the experience of feeling close to someone and having a romantic attraction to them and not having it reciprocated, but still liking that relationship, liking the friendship, just because it helps them to feel close to that person. I think we've all kind of experienced that at different points in our lives, and I think Garrick and Bashir are a good example of that. Friendships aren't always 100% reciprocal, Larry.
Right. Well, like ours. We were talking about Bashir and O'Brien, and I was saying I don't know about the rounding the rough corners of Bashir's personality the first couple of years, but now that getting into this, that's a lot of that came from Garrick, kind of wiping off the green, getting rid of the wide-eyed, naivete.
As Jared says, Nemecek and Mattu, they're focus straying. That should also be a button that we make. That should be the other one. There's one other comment. Yeah, so Dan
live
and
support
and
when the
Zahir.
sync failed. Yeah, okay.
Oh my gosh, you're killing me! I love it. The other one that is coming up in the chat is Beverly and Deanna, and Dan mentions that, and Zahir says, I was thinking of Bev and Deanna too, but the writers didn't give them much growth. Am I right? I agree.
We did. Well, we talked. I did mention them. We were laughing about.
You mentioned the aerobic scene.
Yeah. The last 3 years of live STLV, there were a couple of young women that were different ones, different years. But I've seen people cosplay those workout outfits more than once by different people. Which, that's the perfect homage. That's the perfect honorarium. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish they actually had a bit more. When it comes to seeing two female characters speak together in a scene in The Next Generation, not about another man, that doesn't happen too often in Next Generation. So I wish they actually had more scenes together. And we had that discussion on our Star Trek Insurrection watch about the moments that they do share and good and bad associated with that. Yeah.
Somebody in your profession ought to come up with, I don't know, some kind of a test to grade movie and TV scenes to see when there's actual organic female to female empowered dialogue.
Bechdel test perhaps is something we might be referring to.
The Becky
here.
test? What did you say?
No, definitely not the Becky test.
No.
Yeah, so we could go on and on. Maybe Geordi and Hugh. That's a good one here. I would say Hugh and Picard becomes definitely a friendship that we see in Star Trek Picard as well. Hugh is a great pick, Dan. I agree with you, Zahir. Well, Larry, we are at that time of the show where we have gone in lots of different directions here. Larry, I would love to hear about where can people find more of your wonderful work this week.
Are you dripping with sarcasm? Is that what?
No, I am dripping with fatigue for sitting in this chair for two hours.
No. So, at Larry Nemecek on Twitter, LarryNemecek.com, the website where you're watching right now. apparently Victoria was saying she was watching us on YouTube.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I'm not.
We'll find out.
We'll find out. Either way, we will be there for the long haul, definitely, one way or the other. But yeah, all of that. That time in the show is an evil phrase. Thank you, Libby. So yeah, LarryNemecek.com. Larry Nemecek on Twitter. Everybody find me. Wherever you're watching right now is my YouTube and Facebook page. So there.
Yeah.
And please remember our the cocktail party for Improv Generation coming up a week from Sunday from 3 to 6 Pacific. I'd love to see everybody popping in.
There's a new episode of PBS's Self-Evident on PBS. I'm blanking on the channel name. That's not good. No, if you look up Self-Evident on PBS Self-Evident on YouTube, you'll find it. I'll post a link to it after the show is done. We talk about music and how are people using music to get through this tough time. It's a really wonderful episode. I filmed a lot of stuff this week that you're going to be seeing in the next few weeks. I've got a new episode of The Psych Show coming out on Monday that's all about how to quickly learn psychology. I've got more really good stuff coming out. So if you follow me on Twitter at Mattu or on Instagram, you'll see the updates over there. And then you can see a lot more on The Psych Show on YouTube. That's where I publish all my videos and my psychology and mental health communities all right there. And Larry, as always, we have no idea what we're going to be talking about next week. We've got we put our show in the hands of the lower deckers. So that's right. And it's going to be a few more weeks of Lower Decks, and then we'll probably do another little watch party before we dive into Star Trek Discovery and use that to inspire our new topics. And folks, it's been a pleasure spending a little bit of time with you today. I cannot wait to see you again in a week. Until then, folks, live long and prosper.
This is my way of knowing that it's almost over. Trek well, everybody.